Hello, once again. I'm Pastor Jeremy Combs, and we're going to pause for a proverb. Let's go. We're looking at some famous verses, maybe some of the most famous verses in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 3, 5, chapter 3. I almost tripped myself up. Verses 5, 6, and 7. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on thine own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. We come to some of these verses, and a lot of these verses sometimes we would put as life verses. I know my dad, these were his life verses, specifically Proverbs 3, 5. And as we look at these verses, we're reminded that in times of trouble and in an uncertain future, we need a key that is very important to know what direction to go in life, and that is the word trust. Now, trust sometimes can mean reliance or dependence, but here it actually has the idea of refuge. The Lord, with his wisdom, is a safe place of refuge. Think about storms. We're getting into the fall time where we may get storms oftentimes. And what do? You go to a building, you're on the road, you stop, and you go into that gas station. Why? It's a place to get out of the rain, get out of the wind, and to have a place of refuge. Well, greater than that refuge of a home or a gas station would be when we refuge in God. Now, trust is the idea of, yes, grabbing hold of God, trust in the Lord with all your heart, but then you got to be willing to let something go, and that's usually you've got to let go of yourself. I think about the times when my youngest son has walked with me, and he's liking to look all over the place, and I reached down and I grabbed his hand because it was kind of a rocky or bumpy terrain, and at first he got really upset with me, and he's, Dad, you don't need to do that, and then all of a sudden he tripped, and I just had to lift him up, and he didn't hit the ground. And I looked at him and I said, do you know, if I wasn't holding your hand, you would have fallen. And, sometimes that's what we do with God. We don't want to have a crutch, some people will say. We don't want to, have to be confined. But I tell you what, there's nothing better than to have God holding your hand. And sometimes the deal is we've got to let go of our own self and innovations. Well, in all thy ways, acknowledge him. This continues. How do you trust in him, not lean on your own understanding? You've got to acknowledge him in all your ways, and then he shall direct thy path. Stories told about a pilot that was flying a plane on a very foggy day. And of course, he couldn't see, so he had to let the radio or control tower just talk him through the plan to come down. Well, as he was going through all the maneuvers and as he was adjusting exactly what they were saying, he suddenly remembered there was a giant pole near the runway, and he quickly called frantically and said, there's a giant pole down there. And they said, hey, you worry about the instructions. We're going to worry about the obstructions. And that's what we have to do with God. It's easy sometimes to trust God when we can see things are laid out apparently and are just kind of like easy decisions. It's difficult to follow God when everything is not so clear and they're difficult decisions. A Bible commentator by the name of G. Campbell Morgan says it this way about these paths. They're not always an easy or pleasant path, but they're always the right paths. They're not always in those that I would have chosen, but they're always in paths which lead to success. The path that God directs, leads always through mist and mystery, through battle and through bruising, to the fulfillment of the meaning of life. God has it charted out, and sometimes we have to go down a path that we're not real clear of. And then finally, we'll go real quick here. Verse 7, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So this verse finishes up a 3-verse course on how to trust in God and not self. Verse number 5 tells us we need to love God. Verse number 6 really emphasizes we need to not lean on our own understanding. And now we're going to have, you got to look to God in all your ways. Be not wise in your own eyes. It's easy sometimes to not look to God because we're too busy worrying about ourselves. One person said, self-reliance is the province of fools, not the wise man. In fact, it is idolatry. It's us thinking we know things better than God. So how are we doing in the area of being wise in our own eyes? You say, how can you know that? Well, do you pray? Prayer is a faith and an acknowledging of God as our counselor and advisor. Do you look for godly counsel and look to the word of God when you're making not just some decisions, but every decisions in your life? It's like being lost, and people keep telling you, ask, and you just keep driving around wasting time in circles. Don't waste your life. Stop and ask directions. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not on thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Be not wise in your own eyes today. Fear the Lord, and that'll help you to depart from evil.